What if your doctor prescribed blood draining for a simple headache? Or what if you discovered your hand had a mind of its own, acting completely against your will? These sound like scenes from a horror movie, but for some, they were a terrifying reality, and for others, they are a daily struggle. The world of medicine is filled with truths that are far stranger than fiction. So, what are the most bizarre and shocking medical truths that science has ever uncovered? We're counting down the 10 most bizarre medical facts that will leave you speechless. 10. Cocaine and cigarettes as medicine. A treatment plan that would get any modern doctor's license revoked instantly, prescribing cocaine and cigarettes. It's hard to believe there was a time when these substances were not only legal, but actively recommended by medical professionals. Yet, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, this was the norm. Imagine walking into a pharmacy with a pounding migraine and walking out with a prescription for cocaine. It was hailed as a miracle drug, used as a local anesthetic, and even marketed as a pick-me-up for those suffering from depression. Prominent figures, including doctors and psychologists, praised its supposed benefits while ignoring its highly addictive and destructive properties. But the strange prescriptions didn't stop there. If you had asthma, your doctor might have told you to light up. Medicated cigarettes were promoted as a way to relieve anxiety and soothe irritated airways. Ads from that era are surreal, featuring smiling people puffing away to find relief from respiratory problems. Their flawed logic was that the smoke could deliver medicine directly to the lungs. Of course, we now know this is catastrophically wrong. The very things once prescribed to heal are now known to be major causes of addiction, heart disease, and cancer. It's a sobering reminder of how much medical understanding can change, turning yesterday's cure into today's poison. 9. Maggot Therapy, a practice that sounds like something from a medieval torture chamber, but is actually an FDA-approved medical procedure still in use today. Maggot Therapy. That's right, the wriggling larvae of flies are intentionally placed into open wounds to help them heal. If your stomach just did a flip, you're not alone. But before you write it off, the science is as fascinating as it is unnerving. Officially known as maggot debridement therapy, this practice has roots stretching back centuries. Battlefield surgeons in conflicts like the American Civil War noticed that soldiers whose wounds became infested with maggots often had better outcomes. They realized the maggots were cleaning the wounds. Here's how it works. These tiny medical-grade maggots are like master surgeons. They consume only the dead necrotic tissue, leaving healthy tissue completely untouched. This process, called debridement, is critical for healing because dead tissue can harbor bacteria and stop new tissue from forming. And it's not just what they eat. The maggots also secrete substances with powerful antimicrobial properties, disinfecting the wound as they work. In 2004, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration classified medicinal maggots as a medical device, giving it an official seal of approval. Today, it's a cost-effective and highly efficient treatment for chronic, non-healing wounds, especially those infected with antibiotic-resistant bacteria. It's a powerful, if unsettling, example of nature providing a shockingly effective medical solution. 8. Bloodletting, one of the most infamous practices in medical history. Bloodletting. For over 3,000 years, from ancient Egypt all the way to the late 19th century, the answer to almost any ailment was to drain a person's blood. Headache? Let's bleed you. Fever? Bleed you. Pneumonia? Open a vein. It seems completely insane now, so what on earth were they thinking? The practice was based on the ancient theory of humorism, which suggested that the body was filled with 4 humors: black bile, yellow bile, phlegm, and blood. Health was believed to be a perfect balance of these humors, and any illness was a sign that something was out of whack. Usually, an excess of blood was blamed. The logical, though deeply flawed solution was to remove that excess blood to restore balance. This was done in gruesome ways, from using lancets to slice veins to applying leeches that would suck blood directly from the skin. The problem, of course, was that bloodletting wasn't just useless, it was often incredibly harmful. Patients already weakened by illness were made even weaker by significant blood loss. Dehydration, shock, and infection from dirty tools were common, and many people died from the treatment itself. It's believed that even George Washington's death was sped up by aggressive bloodletting. While the practice has been abandoned, its modern descendant, therapeutic phlebotomy, is still used today. For specific conditions like hemochromatosis, iron overload, or polycythemia vera, excess red blood cells, the controlled removal of blood is the most effective treatment. 7. Trepanning, a procedure that is the literal definition of a hole in the head, trepanning. Also known as trepanation, this is one of the oldest surgical procedures known to humanity, involving drilling or cutting a hole into the skull of a living person. Archaeological evidence for this dates back over 7,000 years, with trepanning skulls discovered in Neolithic sites across the globe. The reasons for this were varied. It was sometimes done to treat head injuries, like removing shattered bone fragments or clotted blood. In other cases, it was believed to be a cure for seizures, chronic headaches, or mental disorders, based on the terrifying idea that these conditions were caused by evil spirits that the whole would allow to escape. But what's truly shocking isn't just that it was performed with primitive tools, but that people actually survived it. Many ancient skulls show clear signs of healing around the hole, meaning the person lived for months or even years after the procedure. In one burial site in France, an incredible 40 out of 120 skulls showed evidence of trepanation. This suggests a surprising level of surgical skill, where practitioners knew how to get through the cranium without damaging the delicate brain and blood vessels underneath. The thought of someone carving into your skull with a sharpened piece of flint is pure nightmare fuel, but it represents a brutal first chapter in the history of neurosurgery. 6. The lobotomy, a procedure whose name has become synonymous with medical barbarism. The lobotomy. Popularized in the mid-20th century, this psychosurgery was praised as a miracle cure for everything from schizophrenia to anxiety. The theory, developed by Portuguese neurologist Egas Moniz, who won a Nobel Prize for it in 1949, was that severing the connections in the brain's prefrontal cortex would calm disturbed patients. The most infamous version was the ice pick lobotomy. A surgeon would insert a sharp instrument through the corner of each eye socket, tap it through the bone with a mallet, and swish it back and forth to cut the neural pathways. The whole thing could be done in under 10 minutes. An American physician named Walter Freeman was its most passionate champion. Traveling the country in a van he called the Lobotomobile, performing thousands of these procedures. While the lobotomy sometimes did calm patients, the side effects were catastrophic. Patients were often left emotionally blunted, apathetic, or in a permanent vegetative state. Many suffered seizures or died from the procedure itself. The case of Rosemary Kennedy, sister of President John F. Kennedy, is one of the most tragic examples. A lobotomy at age 23 left her with the mental capacity of a toddler for the rest of her life. The rise of effective antipsychotic drugs in the 1950s finally put an end to the lobotomy, and it's now remembered as a dark and cautionary tale. 5. Alkaptonuria, black urine disease. A condition that sounds more like a strange fictional curse than a real medical disorder. Alkaptonuria, also known as black urine disease. Imagine going through life knowing that your urine, when exposed to air, will turn a startling inky black. This is the reality for people with this incredibly rare inherited disorder, which affects roughly 1 in every 250,000 to 1 million people. The cause lies in a single genetic flaw. The body can't produce enough of an enzyme needed to break down 2 amino acids, leading to a buildup of a chemical called homogentisic acid, HGA. The body tries to get rid of this excess acid through urine, and when HGA meets air, it oxidizes and turns black. But dark urine is just the start. Over time, the same acid builds up in the body's connective tissues, like cartilage and even the whites of the eyes, staining them a bluish-black color. This staining isn't just cosmetic, it causes severe early-onset osteoarthritis. Heart valves can become brittle, and kidney stones are common. For decades, there was no specific treatment. However, in a major breakthrough, the European Medicines Agency approved the drug nitisinone in 2020, and the FDA followed with its approval in June 2025. This medication works by drastically reducing the production of HGA. While it isn't a cure, it has been shown to improve pain, function, and energy, offering new hope for those living with this bizarre condition. 4. Malaria therapy for syphilis. A perfect example of fighting fire with fire, in the most dangerous way possible. Before penicillin, syphilis was a devastating disease that could attack the brain, leading to a condition called general paralysis of the insane, essentially a death sentence. Faced with this, an Austrian psychiatrist named Julius Wagner-Jaureg had a radical idea. He noticed that some mentally ill patients seemed to improve after getting sick with diseases that caused high fevers. He theorized that a severe, prolonged fever could kill the syphilis bacteria. So in 1917, he began intentionally infecting his syphilis patients with a different, also deadly disease, malaria. The logic was terrifying, but brilliant. Malaria induces incredibly high fevers, sometimes over 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Wagner-Jaureg gambled that this intense heat would destroy the heat-sensitive syphilis bacteria. If the patient survived, they could then be treated for the malaria with quinine, a known cure. The results were astonishing for the time. In an era with no other options, this malariotherapy had remarkable success. A review of cases showed that over half of patients had some form of remission from a previously incurable condition. For this work, Wagner-Jauregg was awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1927. Of course, the treatment was incredibly risky, and some patients died from the induced malaria. The practice became obsolete with the arrival of penicillin in the 1940s, but it remains a stunning example of medical desperation leading to a bizarre and sometimes life-saving solution. 3. Medical cannibalism. For hundreds of years in Europe, peaking in the 16th and 17th centuries, consuming parts of the human body was considered a legitimate medical practice. This wasn't some fringe belief. It was mainstream medicine practiced by priests, scientists, and even royalty. Apothecaries did a brisk trade in remedies made from human bones, blood, and fat. One of the most popular ingredients was mummia, which was essentially powdered Egyptian mummy. Mummies were stolen from tombs, shipped to Europe, ground up, and sold as a treatment for everything from headaches to internal bleeding. When the supply of authentic mummies ran low, a counterfeit market emerged using the corpses of executed criminals. But it didn't stop there. Fresh human blood was thought to be especially potent. In ancient Rome, people with epilepsy would stand by at gladiator matches to drink the blood of the fallen. This practice continued into the 18th century, where crowds would gather at public executions to pay for a drink of the warm blood of the condemned. The thinking was based on a form of sympathetic magic. Powdered skull was used to treat head ailments, and human fat was rubbed on the skin to heal wounds. The body of a healthy person, it was believed, could restore health to a sick one. This nauseating chapter in medicine finally began to fade in the 18th century as scientific understanding grew. 2. The genetic lottery, muscular dystrophy, and sickle cell disease. These aren't historical oddities. They are devastating diseases that people are born with today. Muscular dystrophy is a group of over 30 genetic disorders that cause progressive weakness and loss of muscle mass. In Duchenne muscular dystrophy, DMD, one of the most severe forms, a genetic flaw prevents the body from making a crucial protein called dystrophin. Without it, muscle fibers start to fall apart. Boys with DMD are often in wheelchairs by their early teens, and the disease eventually attacks the heart and lungs. Sickle cell disease is caused by a single mutation in the gene for hemoglobin, the protein in red blood cells that carries oxygen. This one error causes red blood cells, which should be round, to deform into a rigid sickle shape. These misshapen cells get stuck in small blood vessels, causing excruciating pain, organ damage, and strokes. For decades, treatments were limited, but we are now in a revolutionary era. In late 2023, the FDA approved groundbreaking gene therapies for sickle cell disease. Using technologies like CRISPR, doctors can now edit a patient's own stem cells to correct the genetic defect, offering what may be the first true cures. For Duchenne muscular dystrophy, similar gene therapies are in advanced clinical trials and show enormous promise, offering hope for an approval in the near future. 1. Hutchinson-Gilford Progeria syndrome. It's the closest thing to life in fast-forward Hutchinson-Gilford Progeria syndrome, or HGPS. This is an extremely rare, fatal genetic disorder that causes rapid premature aging in children. Imagine a perfectly healthy baby who, within their first 2 years, begins to show signs of old age. That is the heartbreaking reality of progeria. The cause is a tiny mutation in the LMNA gene, which is responsible for a protein that holds a cell's nucleus together. This mutation leads to a toxic protein called progerin, which builds up in cells and accelerates the aging process at an alarming rate. Children with progeria develop aged-looking skin, lose their hair, and suffer from conditions typically seen in the elderly, like stiff joints, fragile bones, and severe heart disease. Their minds remain sharp and childlike, trapped inside a body that is aging 10 times too fast. There are only a few hundred known cases worldwide, and the average life expectancy is just around 14.5 years. The most common cause of death is heart attack or stroke. For many years, there was no treatment. Then, in 2020, the FDA approved the first ever drug, lonafarnib, which has been shown to extend life by an average of 2.5 years. But the real hope lies on the horizon. Cutting-edge research is focused on gene editing technologies like CRISPR, designed to correct the genetic error or stop the toxic progerin protein from being made. These experimental treatments have shown incredible promise, offering the first real possibility of not just slowing the disease, but one day reversing its devastating effects. So there you have it, from doctors prescribing cocaine to surgeons drilling holes in skulls, and from bodies that age too fast to diseases fought with other diseases. The world of medicine is a testament to human ingenuity, our sometimes misguided beliefs, and our relentless quest to understand the human body. We've seen how yesterday's miracle cure can become today's cautionary tale, and how modern science is creating cures for conditions once thought to be an inescapable fate. Which of these bizarre medical facts left you the most speechless? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one. Thanks for watching, and if you're hungry for more strange and fascinating truths, make sure you're subscribed.